Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Thursday, happy Leap Day. I'm so excited that you guys have joined us for this virtual Black History Month event on the last day of Black History for us to talk about Black leaders in the HIV movement, which I feel like is just so important. So I'm excited about this conversation. And I am your moderator, Destiny Pearson. I am a program coordinator at NMAC, representing the Coalition for Justice and Equality. And one thing I really love about working with NMAC is with the work that we do, we're leading with race. So it's so important that we have our Black leaders, our Hispanic and Latinx leaders, um, Asian leaders, Native American leaders. Like, we need everyone to be a part of this movement for us to end the HIV epidemic. So I'm happy that we're having this conversation because Black leaders, we've been there from the beginning, leading the charge, and we're going to be here until the end. So we have our panelists. We have Dante Brown, who is the program manager of the Elevate program at NMAC. We have Adrian Neal. He is going to be representing Next Gen. And we have Diana Chase, who's going to be talking about GLOW. So can you guys tell me a little bit more about your experiences being leaders in the HIV space and how the work that you're doing is helping elevate Black leadership in this space? Dante, do you want to go first?
I'll say I'll go first then. Hi everybody. I literally started in this work on the front line. I was going to Norfolk State and I was home for the summer in Maryland, and someone reached out to me and said, "Hey, do you want to do an outreach job?" Um, in the HIV field. And I was like, sure. So I started in outreach, passing out condoms and trying to get people to sign up to take an HIV test on the mobile unit and also within the office. And that was how I first started off in this work. From there, I went on to be a HIV tester and counselor, and then an STI testing and counselor as well, into also becoming like a case manager. Got into housing for a little bit as well, and then moved into a program manager space.
Diana,
I
you
can go.
go, Adrian.
Diana, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead if you want to go.
I'm sorry, I'm still trying to adjust to this. In my case, I'm extremely close to trans women from me attending high school and me transitioning in high school to college and going through those processes. I've been close to a lot of the different trans women in my community in the Washington D.C. area, the DMV area. So for me, um, that disparity was more of a frontline situation, making sure that people are attached to testing, making sure they're attached to proper mental health, making sure that they're attached to the proper resources, and keeping those resources, as well as at times being a confidant for most people. Because um, I came in on the Casa Ruby era, and it was not always proper that your information would stay where it needs to stay at. So being able to confide in each other in groups to say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. This is the space that I'm in. I need assistance. I need help. That has been my front line. And then now I'm getting actually into more of it with becoming an HIV tester, with going through the proper schooling, with going through the proper channels, being a CHW, and moving forward.
Hi again, everyone. My name is Adrian. So I started my career, I say back in 2012. That's actually when I received my diagnosis. And then also, like Dante, I believe I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If I'm not, I apologize. But just like I started on the front line. So I was an outreach services specialist that was charged with creating new relationships and partnerships with the community. Then was asked to go to the health department, working as a disease intervention specialist, doing testing as well as doing community programs centered around Black gay men. And then became a program manager over a policy and advocacy division of Equitas Health, formerly AIDS Resource Center of Ohio. After that, I got the opportunity to work at AIDS United, where I continued to grow in the capacity building space, and then left there as a capacity building program manager. Worked at Chickatelli and Associates for a few moments, and now at ETR, And at ETR, one of the things that I'm really, really excited about is that I get the opportunity to lead a project in which we work with HBCU students to develop sexual health messaging via social media. And so we, provide a space for young Black students to be able to get the message out there when it comes to sexual well-being. We're able to pay them monthly and give them the resources necessary to be able to do this work. And as it relates to next gen under NMAC, I have the esteemed opportunity to be able to lead a cohort of young people who desire to grow in this field and really want to make change and make innovative and creative change, which is what's needed. And so I know you had also asked about, like, what has leadership looked like for us in our own career paths. And for me, it has looked like being able to inspire a younger generation to walk authentically into who they are, because that's the only way we're going to end this epidemic. I think too many times we tend to limit young people. We tend to limit their voices, especially young Black folks, especially young Black women, young Black trans women. And it's when we continue to embrace the experiences, both lived and educational and professional, that we can begin to move the needle on this fight. Until then, we're going to keep going around in circles as we have been doing.
Thank you for sharing that, Adrian, because I'll talk about this a little later and kind of like pivots to my next question. But I think it's just so important that you talked about the youth and really connecting with them and allowing them to have their own voice. Because I definitely feel like currently in the HIV space, and the leaders, we're not really seeing a lot of youth, being present and being shown. So I think it's really important that we do have younger people really, taking over this movement as they grow in their roles. So to kind of pivot to the next question, you kind of talked about it a little bit already, about the youth involvement in the HIV movement. But what do you guys think should be some things that should change within the HIV movement, the Black HIV space, and leadership space? What do you need to see more of? What are some things that we should change? Diane, do you want to go first?
Okay. So my experience before working into the space and getting into the space, um, when it comes to the actual organizations, can we get an update and can we also strictly enforce HIPAA laws? No one should feel any kind of way or feel as though them stating what they have going on, whether it's mental health, whether it's HIV, whether it's housing, any of those things, they should never have to worry about their information being put out there, used against them. They should never have to worry about bias. They should never have to worry about limited resources because I'll help someone who isn't Ryan White, but I really don't have anything for you currently right now, even though programs offer wraparound services. That's one thing. I also think that where we incentivize, I heard, I'm sorry, I have my glasses are currently not with me. Adrian at the bottom was talking about different incentives that NMAC and other programs have. I think we should like really focus on incentivizing you taking care of yourself. We should focus on incentivizing like the people that taking your medicine, making it to your appointments. There should be more incentives for that. And the reason why I say that is because we incentivize so many other things. You get rewards, you get accolades just for stepping out your door, just for going here, just for showing up. Why can't it be the same way when it comes to HIV? I understand that living a longer life or having a better quality of life, you would think that would be enough. For some people, that's not. When you're in survival space and it takes a certain amount of time to acquire a certain thing or to get to a certain space, you're not thinking. That's not the headspace that everyone is in. So I think that we should provide more incentives. I think we should be stricter with our HIPAA laws. I also think that we should like really understand that mental health and HIV go hand in hand. Because if you do not mentally think that you have something, what are you treating? What are you fixing? What are you extending as far as your quality of life? If it's not already here that, okay, this is what I have, this is what I'm dealing with, this is what I'm changing, this is not a death date, this is not the end, I can go further. If you're not mentally in that space, then physically your wellness will not match up.
So I'll go next. I think piggybacking off of what Adrian said, as far as like making sure that we are bringing youth into the conversation for one. Um, we will not all be here for forever, none of us, when we know that life is not promised. But also, I feel like it's so important that you bring everyone to the table and you have everyone as a part of the conversation. As someone like approaching 40 this year, my outlook on how things should go is going to be different than somebody who is in their 20s or younger, or in their mid 20s, maybe even 30s. I'm going to have a different outlook, and I can't say what's necessarily best for them all the time, but if you have them at the table as well, they can tell you what's best for them and what they need, as well as like the program manager for the Elevate program. And with that program, it's about making sure that people living with HIV are meaningfully involved in all aspects of Ryan White, the planning, improvement, and delivery. So making sure that you have all of these populations at the table, so that they're able to speak these communities, so that they can speak for themselves. And we all have voices, but far too long we've listened to um, certain groups of people make the decisions for us versus us making the decisions, or at least being included in those decisions that are being made. So inclusivity is one of the things that I definitely think needs to happen more within Black leadership. I think changing of the guards, that doesn't mean that we are unappreciative for what the leaders of the movement who have done what they have done before us and paved the way. However, as you're doing that, sometimes you have to change the guards, and you have to make room for those next evolving leaders to come in and say, hey, thank you so much for what you have done so far. Now, can you help me and assist me in making sure that we can keep this going and we can take this to the next level? Um, because we have to have a growth mindset. If we don't have a growth mindset at the point where we start feeling like we have all of the answers, that's when we know for sure it's time for us to move out of the way. Because if we're doing everything is the same old way it's been done, we're going to continue to see the same results. So I think for me, one of the biggest things that will further us as far as Black people within the HIV movement is making sure that we're being inclusive of all different communities that are a part of the Black community, whether that's the heterosexual community, that is the LGBTQIA, trans, people living with HIV, youth, house and ballroom, all of the different subsectors, and making sure that we're including all of them and everyone has a seat at the table so that they have a voice in what is best for them.
I'll just add that I think what's really going to be beneficial is for us to move from community building to movement building. And there's a difference, right? And really making sure that we are not gatekeeping tools and skills and knowledge that other folks need in order to be able to grow and develop, right? So, like, I'm a firm believer that if you give community one the space, if you give community two the tools and knowledge, if you give community three the opportunity, that they will go far and beyond what you thought they could. And so, not only should we be investing. I'm sorry, bringing people to the table and inviting people to the table and creating space for them to eat at the table, blah, 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 but we should be teaching them how to utilize the tools that are at that table, right? And so, like for example, one of the other projects that I lead in my role at ETR is called Nova, and it's a project in which we are working, or we're developing a strategic planning training that's specific to translate organizations in order to move them from crisis. In order to move them from a state of crisis to success and sustainability. And so the reason why I bring that project up is because in that project, we are not only creating a thing for a community, we're creating the thing. We are, collaborating with trans leaders to be able to facilitate this thing. And we're like creating space for them to practice and know how to use these tools to be able to take it and then teach it back to their community or move it forward. And I think that's the type of thing that we need to do. Don't just teach me how to do something, but give it to me to learn on my own and then teach it to my community, right? As a
Mhm.
person who's part of that community. And yeah, it's so plus all the things that everybody else said.
Just really
Um,
quick. Oh, I'm sorry.
no,
No, I'm just
continue.
going to say just really. I was just going to say really quick. Speaking of that, one of the things that I actually was just discussing at a pharmaceutical dinner that we were at, and they were asking like, how can we get this message across more, da da da. And I said basically what Adrian just said, like, y'all provide us with the tools, but then give us the resources for the people that you are giving the tools to and you're providing the education to go into their communities and they talk to their communities because they are the subject matter experts there, not you all. So, the money that you're putting towards all of these other things, put some of that money to these communities that you want to touch. They know what they're doing. Let them do it. So I just wanted to add that too because it's so important. I think like programs like POL that used to be around popular opinion leaders, those type of initiatives were so important because it literally taught skills to the people who were the influential people within their communities, and then they were the ones that was getting the message out there. And we know that communities are more prone to listen to the people who they feel like look like them and represent them.
I agree, Dante, because when I'm thinking, picking back on the conversation of youth and even Adrian talking about moving from capacity building to movement building, I think, the youth is very passionate about a lot of things. And when you give them those tools to be able to work in their communities and to disseminate information, I feel like that's really important. So, I think one of the biggest things with in my role with the coalition, we're talking a lot about with our coalition partners of getting out to vote, and I think the biggest part with us as an organization, other HIV organizations, any organization, are we really like maximizing our communication with the youth to really make sure that they have all the tools and information that they need, not to just even like make sure they're voting properly and they're ready to vote in this election, but anything, make sure that they have all the information they need as we're disseminating information about HIV and STIs to them, because you know I'm young, a lot of my, friends and just, young people in general, we're getting a lot of our information through social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter or X. So it's just so important. Like, a lot of times we're not really maximizing our opportunities on these social media platforms to make sure that they're getting the right information. I feel like that's where the disconnect is. So, how can we really elevate our social media game to be able to connect with the youth and to get them more involved? I feel like it's so important. So, I definitely feel like that's one thing that could be changed.
Social, you're absolutely right. And as somebody who is closer to 40 than anything else, previously, I can admit that, I'm not the best at social media. However, I do understand the importance of being able to adapt in order to get information and knowledge out there, right? Which is why
Mhm.
projects and programs that NMAC does, that ETR does, Age United does, is really important, that are centered around youth and social media. And to be perfectly honest, I think what organizations need to do is, when they start their strategic planning process, they need to be intentional about infusing social media into their infrastructure, right? And so that means being able to set aside funding, being able to hire a dedicated person or persons for social media activities within the organization, not just when it comes to youth work, but even me as a 40-year-old person. I scroll Instagram right before I go to bed, honey. I'm in bed by 9 o'clock, but best believe for that next hour, I'm in bed. Doop, 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 doop. So, right. So everybody's there and everybody's accessing information. So why not leverage that opportunity? And I think it's because nonprofits, one, do not necessarily always have the funding to be able to invest in social media like they need to. And then two, because let's be real, public health, government is always late with stuff, right? And so like stuff that's been done 5 years ago, we are just now catching up. So it's been within the last 5 to 8 years that organizations have just then began to incorporate social media, but not at the level that's needed. So I think you're absolutely right. And also what that means is that funders need to start creating space within their grants that is specific to social media, right? So start creating space for these organizations to be intentionally, or I'm sorry, to intentionally and meaningfully invest in their social media infrastructures.
I definitely agree. I want to pivot the conversation a little bit to have you guys have the space to definitely highlight some amazing Black leaders that are also in the HIV space, but then also just highlight the work that you're doing. Little like shameless plug for the work that you're doing currently. Diana, do you want to go first?
Actually, currently, right now, I'm working. I'm probably more on the groundwork right now. I was attached to a couple of different organizations, but relocating back into Washington D.C. permanently right now, I just have kind of taken a seat back. Um, I was working with the Devereaux Project, which deals with sexual assault victims. So that was pretty much based on just like sexual assault victims that are affected, lifestyle changes, brace for change, people that are trying to transition from one space of life to the next, whether it's traditional work to non-traditional work, whether it's coming from the streets and going into school, whether it's coming from lived experience and wanting to increase and embrace your education. Those are some of the sad things that I've been working on. Right now, I would like to shout out Madeline Poe from HIPS. I've been working very close with her because what we have been doing is going back into the housing sector, going back into um, gender affirming care and picking up the strays and the stragglers that have kind of been lost and swept aside and making sure that people are rehoused, making sure that they understand that gender affirming care is still a thing in the District of Columbia. Working very closely with people that are the harm reduction spaces. Like I'm honestly right now the space that I'm in, I'm kind of ground level and I'm at the basics, but it's near and dear to me because right now HIV, mental health, and crystal meth usage are some very, very high things that are happening in my community with people that I know that I'm very close to. So that's the step. That's the route that I've chosen right now, currently, to go in and to make sure that my youth that are coming in, because this is something that you keep pinpointing, the youth that are coming in, they're in survival mode. So when you're giving them a space and you're telling them, I need this done on the timeline, I need that done on the timeline, I need this done on this timeline. For us who are professional, we understand. We understand the difference between a BCC and a CC. We understand that this needs to be done by close of business. When you're telling them that and they're in a survival mode, they're in a survival space, it's not computing with them. So I'm actually taking the time out to say, hey, this is the services you need. This is what you're telling me based upon what you're telling me, the help that you need. These are the steps that you're going to have to take. No, everything is not going to be overnight, but if you get started right now and you stick to it, and this couple of months, while they're telling you it's a backup, in a couple of months, you'll be where you need to be at. Just stay on it. Just stay to it. I'm on the ground level right now.
Thank you for that. Dante?
I guess I'll start first with like currently what I'm doing is on the road like almost at least once to twice a month with the Elevate and now Escalate programs. Which if you are not aware of them, please make sure to check out targethiv.org/elevate or slash escalate. Elevate, like I said earlier, is about empowering leadership with people living with HIV to get involved in the planning, improving and delivering around white HIV and AIDS program services. And Escalate is all about destigmatization of HIV, exploring race and gender, how all of those things are a part of that, of the stigma around it. Um, that said, I guess I would start first with shouting out the amazing team at MMAC of HIV, Black HIV leaders within the movement, staff that I work with who are completely amazing. The facilitators that we have who are part of this training who do such a great job. I don't want to single out anybody's names because I don't want to leave anyone out, but all of them are amazing and they bring their expertise, their lived experiences and professional experiences to each and every training, which has made it dynamic. And I think as we talk about shouting out Black leaders within the HIV movement, I would be remiss to not mention like Charles Shazar or Terrell Parker, who are former MAC employees who really laid a lot of the groundwork for both programs, Elevate and Escalate, and helped to make the programs as dynamic as they are today. I can say that I probably would not be able to do the work that I'm doing with these programs and within community if it wasn't with the help of them and having them there from the beginning to get it going. And just shout outs to all of the young and middle age and older generations too who have just been a part of this movement altogether because it's not easy and a lot of times we are doing this selfless work and you don't always get time to take to yourself and we're just out here like doing it because we have the passion, we have the drive, and we know that it needs to happen. And oftentimes, self care is not at the front of the scope that we look at, even though we need to. So just shout outs to all of us. Keep doing what we're doing. I think that with us working together, and I think that's another thing, making sure that we're collaborating because we can end the epidemic and we can see a brighter future. And again, I will say again, there's nothing wrong with changing the guard sometimes and making sure that we're letting and allowing younger people to lead sometimes, or at least giving them space to have a voice.
All right, so shameless plugs. ETR, the organization I work at now, I'm gonna plug in B5. Again, it's a project in which we work with HBCU students to develop public health. I'm sorry, sexual well-being messages via social media. I'm also going to shout out the Free Lux Project. I sit on the board of the Free Lux Project, but it's an organization that promotes HIV testing, that fights against stigma, that does a wealth of events, not only within the Dallas area, but also virtually. Speaking of leaders, I'm going to shout out the CEO of the Free Lux Project, which is Nathaniel Holly, one of my besties. Truly, truly, truly appreciate him. Also, going to shout out Dr. Tatiana Moten, who has been my sister for the last, 10 years, who I love, and just want to bring her into this space and all the amazing things that she's doing. Also, Dr. Michael Everett, who is the Chief People and Culture Officer at ETR, who has done a wealth of trainings and capacity building and technical assistance things for many, many organizations, both on the state and national levels. And then I also want to shout out Chris Walker, who's doing amazing work within Dallas, Texas, also all over the country. And then, of course, shout out Next Gen, which is under MMAC. I'm well, not SME, I'm a mentor or a champion for the Next Gen project. And so, really appreciate what MSJ and Gabriella are really doing on that project to make sure that we are building the capacity, knowledge, tools, and skills of young people to be able to navigate this field in a way that is going to honor who they are, as well as affect change in the world when it comes to reducing new HIV infections. So, yeah.
Thank you all for sharing. I kind of already talked about this a little bit, but working for the coalition at NMAC, we are focusing a lot on Get Out to Vote. And in the upcoming months, we will have a Get Out to Vote website to give out a lot of information on um, where to vote, how to register, voter registration deadlines, early voting deadlines, how to find your sample ballot. So I'm really excited about that because this is a really important election, a very crucial election. So making sure our people have all the information that they need to make the right choices and to vote wisely is very, very important. But before I end this webinar, lovely webinar and conversation, I wanted to see if you guys had anything else to say before I close out.
I just wanted to say on behalf of Glow, that was one of the best experiences that I have had coming together with transgender women and cisgender women and sitting in a place of power and leadership. There was no status, there were no egos. It was very broken down. I wish, like I told them, I wish it had just been a little bit longer because the bonds that were honestly formed in that room, it was just like, you may not necessarily find it. We came from all over. You may not necessarily find it in your city, in your area, in your region. So it was just really amazing. It was a humbling experience. It was fab. It was fab. I think there should be more people should be able to experience it. I think they should probably make it a little bit longer, or or at least have like situations where we could actually come together and not just brainstorm, but actually come together and actually do something on a larger scale. I think that would be amazing. But that was just it. It was fab.
I just like to co-sign that because being able to go to a glow training last year in Chicago, it was just so amazing just to be able to see and watch everything happen, the magic happen. It was just like a little sisterhood too, because even after the trainings and how we were able to bond afterwards and like explore Chicago, I really cherished that weekend. I really, really loved it. And Gabriella, she does such an amazing job with the program. So I'm excited to see where it goes from here. Let's see if anyone has any questions.
I see one person with their hand raised. If you could submit your question through the either through the chat or through the question feature, because I'm not able to pull you up on the stage.
While we wait,
Also,
oh, I'm sorry.
real quick before we transition into the wrap up, I just want to mention that if you're interested in HIV testing or other services, you can find more at the CDC's Let's Stop HIV Together website, which will be provided in the chat. Sorry, go ahead, Dante.
No, I was just gonna add as like final remarks to if we didn't get any questions to what Diana was saying, just about the inclusivity of it. And as we talk about the Black HIV movement, I think we have to talk about the Black community and realize that us as Black people have to be able to come together, regardless of race, sexuality, gender, class. And really come together just as a Black community, because if we're talking about we want to end this epidemic, first we have to erase the stigma, and I think that starts with the community as a whole. And so I think focusing also on just more inclusivity in training such as Glow and Elevate, Escalade, and Next Gen, and just making sure that we're circling in too on making sure that we're looking at the Black community as a whole and doing the work for us to be able to see each other, to alleviate that part, because once we get that out the way, there's no stopping it. So just putting that out there as well.
Also, as we update and grow, I'm noticing that the verbiage changes. Some things that you might say or how you may refer to some things can be known as offensive. And um, piggybacking off of what Adrian said, with social media, people are not always up to date. I know, especially in our community, Black people are not always up to date. So that, and at these little given moments, the correct verbiage, what you're supposed to say, things that are listed as being harmful. Can we actively continue to update these things? Because I sat in the meeting and we were hearing different things that were being said, but the way that somebody was framing something was could have been taken as offensive versus it's always revolving, it's always changing, it's always updating.
So we do
Only
have
thing that
some. Oh, go ahead, finish what you were saying, and then we do have a couple questions actually.
awesome sauce. The only thing that I'll say, and it's going to be quick, is that we need to start being, and sorry, and Mac, I'm about to curse. We need to start being Black as fuck. So, like, unapologetically. And so, with the erasure of our history, with the erasure of, the contributions that Black folks have made throughout history, with the change in these laws, with like all these things, it's time for us to, not only do a MLK approach, but also do a Malcolm X approach, right? We have to do both. And I think it's time for us to walk into our Blackness, and to just like be like, hey, we're here and this is what we're going to do, like it or not. Yeah. And organizations need to support that.
Exactly,
Thank
exactly.
you so much for that. All right, let's go ahead and get into some of these questions. So we have a question from Cynthia Rogers. What is the acronym for HIPS? I guess HIPS. What is it? What does that stand for?
HIPS actually stands for Helping Individual Prostitutes Survive. It originally started as an organization that was protective and safe for sex workers.
Thank you for that, Diana. And we also have another question from Gregory Victorian. How do you motivate young persons to get involved in HIV prevention slash research slash policy?
I was well,
I would say,
I would just say, with me being lived experience and actually going through this and actually having people around me, young individuals that have went through this, just having conversations with them, being mindful about what you say and how you say it, and actually putting them in a space to feel like they can make change. We have to be like aware of how we articulate things and how we move. Like, just literally, if you welcome them into that space and you give them the resources and you let them know that this is a battle that it's not anything for you to just walk around blind to and not be aware of what's going on. Every single day, you might have that girl that you're sitting close to, your girlfriend that you're sitting in the room with. We're in a space of sex work. We're in a space of uh, in these different spaces. Like you might really have somebody who's literally next to you every single day, and are being stigmatized, and you would never know. So like just by literally having human conversations, by letting them know that this is a safe space, it kind of stigmatize everything. And it makes them want to get active. You can tell me that I could really be a help. I could really help change my own life or change my friend's life. I have friends that are suffering from drug abuse, which is coming from this. If you actually sit down and have human conversations, egoless conversations, and you provide them with actual factual resources, not talking out the side of your neck, but you actually have this ground level, ground proof standing, they will listen. It hasn't gone wrong yet. They will listen. Not only do they listen, but they want to be a part. They want to figure out how they can get attached. They want to figure out how they can be connected. My city in general is going through something major. All of the youth that are now trying to get into the field of advocacy when it comes to HIV, homelessness, all of these things, they're working with Ruby. So with them going through the process that they went through and having things snatched from underneath of them, they just want some assurity and the stability that change can actually happen before they step out there.
I would just add to that, not only creating safe spaces, but as Dr. Tatiana Moten says, creating brave spaces where people are able to feel empowered and feel like that they can have their voice and be able to, share their lived experience or their thoughts or whatever it is. So creating those spaces that not are only safe, but are also brave enough for them to be to feel they have a voice and that it will be listened to as well.
I think you have to also make these things relatable to young people. Like, find where there's some intersectionality between this stuff in their lives. So, like, again, I keep bringing up BFI because it's my heart. We had a fellow last year who was a business major who had joined the fellowship and was a fashion designer. And he was in the midst of figuring out how can he incorporate his fashion or his business mindset, how can he utilize those skills and expertise to be able to push this fight forward? And I think that's what we have to do. Public health, specifically sexual health, has been so siloed. I mean, no shade at Mac, but just at the biomedical summit last year, we finally talked about pleasure when it came to sex. And sex is the thing that leads to an HIV infection, right? Or one of the things that leads to an HIV infection. So how are we just now in 2023 talking about pleasure at a biomedical summit, right? And so, like, we need to start making sure that we are creating, and that's part of innovation, is being able to make sure we're able to create spaces for people to bring in their own expertise outside of sexual health, outside of public health, and figure out how those things intersect in order to move the work forward. I think it would be amazing for a math major to come in and work with our researchers, our outreach services specialists, and figure out some mathematical something, I don't know, that's going to help us eradicate this virus. Or I got the opportunity to work with a frat brother and a friend to where we were able to teach HIV education through dance. I was a dance major, right? And so we taught it through movement. Like, what other opportunities are there out there? There are so many creative people that aren't in sexual health, that are in public health, that could lend their skills and expertise to what we're doing to make sure that we're able to move forward with no new HIV infections.
Just one other thing I would add as far as with the youth is just also hiring them, not sending out people that are not their age to try to get them on board. Hire people that look like them. Once again, bring them to the table and give them jobs so that
Yeah.
they can reach out and get the people involved that they want to get in with the people that look like them. They know their age group and their demographic and their population the best. Give them jobs, which also then supports them as well.
Don't
And
have
give
Exactly.
them positions of power.
don't have them
Not just
volunteer and show their faces and then don't
Hmm.
know.
No
That is
unpaid internships. But I co-sign with what everyone was saying because I definitely feel like, people look at like younger people being like politically ap- apathetic and, just not really caring about these issues, but we actually do care. I just feel like, again, it's just about the conversation of like, how are we reaching the youth and how are we communicating with them? Because, um, a lot of them are just not getting the message properly. So I just feel like, just how we communicate with them and how we speak to them is really the key to all of this, because, we've seen throughout history when young people are really passionate about everything, like, gun control or like the Palestine and Israel conflict. We're really passionate about things that really have large ramifications and we feel like can really affect our future. So, just reframing the conversations about when we're talking about HIV, when we're having these conversations with the youth, I feel like it's really important.
And to your point, Destiny, I also feel like we've also seen what it looks like when young people step forward to use their voices on these issues and they feel like they're being ignored and they're not being listened to, and how they then say, okay, well, let's move out of the way and let's not have nothing to really do with this. Then also, we've seen that as well. So I think that speaks to, like you said, young people are passionate. They know what they're talking about. They know what they want. So allow them and give them the resources and everything for them to be able to do it. Because when we don't and we ignore them and act like we got all the answers, and I mean, we've seen this in this country for years where we have, I mean, no shade, older white men who tend to make all the decisions for an entire country. And where has that gotten
Hmm.
us?
Nowhere.
So just wanted to add that.
Are there any more questions, Taylor?
Those are the questions for now. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you guys all for joining us for this event. Again, being able to end Black History Month on a high note by talking about Black leadership and how important it is, as we move forward with ending this HIV epidemic, of having Black leaders at the forefront leading the change. So, like Taylor mentioned, if you're interested in learning more about HIV testing and other services, to visit the CDC Let's Stop Together website that she linked below. And this is just one of the few events that NMAC is having with leaders of color in the HIV space to talk about their experiences working together. So definitely look on our social media and on our website to get more information on when those events are coming out in the future. But thank you guys again for joining this webinar, and I hope you guys have an amazing day.